Okay, so picture this. You wake up tomorrow and literally everything you own is just gone. Welcome to the Explainer. That was the brutal, devastating reality for a janitor in Akron, Ohio back in 1933, when his bank collapsed overnight during the Great Depression. Yet somehow, against all odds, by 1941, he owned his house outright and had absolutely zero debt. So how in the world did he pull that off? How did a guy who lost the whole shebang achieve total financial freedom right in the middle of America's worst economic collapse? Well, he didn't use some secret Wall Street investment hack. He used absolutely ruthless, everyday survival tricks that his mom taught him. Today, we're diving into this fascinating source material that breaks down exactly how families survived and even thrived when the entire financial system literally turned against them. Now, I want you to contrast that 1930s debt-free mindset with our reality today. $17 trillion. Yeah, you heard that right. That is the staggering amount of consumer debt sitting in the US right now. It's astronomical. And the material we're looking at today makes a wild argument that over the last 90 years or so, the financial industry has actively worked to make sure we forgot the exact tricks that saved families like our Akron janitor. They intentionally replaced them with systems designed to keep us borrowing basically forever. So let's jump straight into theme 1, severing the bank's cut. The absolute core of these survival tactics was keeping money out of institutions entirely. Take the paper envelope system. It's brutally honest. On payday, cash went straight into physical, labeled envelopes. One for rent, one for groceries, one for coal. And here's the kicker. When an envelope was empty, you stopped spending. Period. No exceptions, no magical overdrafts. Contrast that with today. We've got these modern budgeting apps that often charge, $12 a month just to connect to accounts that hit you with even more hidden fees. Those old paper envelopes didn't charge a single cent, and they physically stopped you from spending money you didn't have. And this mindset extended right into how people bought stuff. Back then, if you couldn't afford something, you used layaway. You paid a few cents a week, zero interest, zero debt, and you only brought the item home when it was 100% paid off. Pure delayed gratification, right? Now, compare that to today's credit card sitting at a whopping 22% interest. The source highlights some painful modern math here. A $40 purchase on a credit card, if you're just paying the minimum, can easily balloon to $72. Meanwhile, your great-grandmother paid her $40, waited a bit, and owed absolutely nothing to anyone. You might be wondering, why the extreme aversion to banks? Well, get this. Between 1930 and 1933, more than 9,000 American banks failed. 9,000! Depositors literally lost $1.3 billion in life savings. Honestly, it makes perfect sense why families kept their emergency cash stuffed in coffee cans or sewn into mattresses. It wasn't just some uneducated paranoia. It was lived experience. They knew firsthand that institutions could just lock their doors and wipe them out overnight. It all boiled down to one ruthless rule of survival. The source sums it up beautifully. The fewer institutions that touch your money, the more of it you keep. Bypassing the middleman wasn't just a nice idea, it was an absolutely vital mechanism to stay afloat. Every single dollar managed in a physical envelope or, a coffee can was a dollar that wasn't sitting in a checking account generating maintenance fees for somebody else. Moving right along to theme 2, radical daily self-reliance. To survive the 1930s, folks needed extreme frugality and domestic ingenuity to slash their daily living expenses to the absolute bone. I mean, nothing went to waste. Glass jars, string, tinfoil, all of it was meticulously saved and reused. Worn clothes? You didn't replace them. You carefully darned your socks using a wooden egg. To save on expensive heating coal, they literally insulated their walls with old newspapers and cardboard. And instead of buying pricey commercial cleaners, families made their own from white vinegar and baking soda. A whole year's worth of homemade supplies cost less than $1. And those saved pennies, that's what kept food on the table. Think about the daily math in the kitchen. Today, we pay a massive premium for convenience. But back then, convenience food was basically an expensive luxury. A can of soup would run you about 10 cents, but a massive pot of homemade soup, made entirely from scratch with leftover bones and garden veggies, just 2 cents. And it fed twice as many people. Mothers essentially traded their time, which unemployed families had plenty of, unfortunately, to save massive percentages on food costs instead of buying anything pre-made. And you have to hear about the return on investment they managed right in their own backyards. It's genuinely awe-inspiring. $50? During the Depression, families figured out that a measly $2 investment in Victory Garden seeds could produce $50 worth of vegetables over a single summer. They canned the excess green beans and tomatoes for winter, basically building a literal wall of food insurance on their cellar shelves for those harsh months when the work dried up. Which brings us to theme 3, the community economy. When actual cash completely dried up in towns across the country, communities had to figure out how to transact and survive together. I absolutely love this anecdote from the source material. In 1935, a rural Indiana carpenter built a hen house for a widow. Now, since cash was practically non-existent, her payment to him was fresh eggs every single Saturday for 2 straight years.
Both came out ahead, and both stayed fed. This hyper-local barter economy was fueled entirely by trust and handshakes, no bank in the middle, and absolutely no transaction fees.
This whole community effort extended directly into buying and living arrangements too. Neighbors formed local buying co-ops, basically pooling whatever money they had to buy 100-pound sacks of flour at wholesale prices. They completely bypassed the grocery store markups. They also doubled up on housing, squeezing extended families under one roof just to split the rent. And they leaned heavily on public libraries to learn new trade skills entirely for free to support their families when their previous industries just vanished. All right, let's look at the turning points, the corporate shift.
The source's overarching argument here is fascinating. It suggests that the modern financial industry intentionally and systematically dismantled those self-reliant habits. It traces this really clear pattern of breaks over the decades. In the 1930s, banks failed, so cash stayed at home. Then by the 1950s, banks started killing off those no-interest Christmas clubs, mostly because they didn't generate overdraft fees. Fast forward to the 70s and 80s, and retailers killed off zero-interest layaway, aggressively pushing high-interest credit cards instead. It's a clear trend. Systems that cost consumers absolutely nothing were systematically replaced with systems designed to extract interest.
So what fueled this massive shift? Well, a huge psychological rebranding campaign after World War II. The frugality that literally saved the previous generation, it was rebranded as poverty. Saving was suddenly made to look like you were just living in fear, hoarding your cash out of paranoia. And debt? Debt was completely rebranded as confidence. It was sold as this glamorous lifestyle tool that you totally deserved, a necessary piece of building a booming consumer economy.
The source makes a really sharp critique here. It argues that replacing these habits wasn't actually progress at all, it was just a highly profitable business model. I mean, today, late fees alone generate $12 billion a year. Interchange fees replaced free layaway. Overdraft charges completely wiped out the honest discipline of envelope budgets. And those little 5-cent paper price books that grandmothers used to manually track grocery prices, replaced by modern apps that track, analyze, and literally sell your personal shopping data to advertisers.
And that leads us into the takeaway, the financial freedom challenge. Let's put the financial outcomes of the past side by side with our present. The Depression generation carried zero debt. To them, debt was like a disease. If they didn't have the physical cash in hand, the purchase simply didn't happen, no exceptions. Compare that to the modern household, which is totally normalized carrying over $7,000 in credit card debt alone. The source argues that we've completely forgotten their healthy fear of debt, and instead, we've inherited a system that wants us constantly owing money. We've essentially diverged onto two entirely different paths. The costly modern way relies on apps, tracking and selling your data, paying 22% credit card interest, dropping $12,000 a year on transit, and buying on impulse with just a tap of your phone. The 1930s way? Built on a private 5-cent paper price book, strict cash-only discipline, walking to save on gas and wear and tear, and ruthless written list planning for every single penny. It really comes down to the expensive, data-heavy modern method versus the simple, private, unyielding discipline of our great-grandparents. Which brings us to a direct challenge straight from the source material. Will you try just one of these historical tricks today? Maybe, just maybe, test out the cash-only envelope method, or keep a physical price book this week just to see how much things actually cost. Are these just outdated poverty tricks, or are they timeless freedom tricks that the financial industry desperately hopes you never remember? Think about it, and seriously consider trying one out. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.